All right, folks, it's time for Shiny Side Out with David Dunger and Mecky. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Take it away, guys.
Welcome to Shiny Side Out with
Dave
and Mecky. We are coming to you live from the Freedom Slips studios in Sydney, Australia, and we are one piece of the information super puzzle on Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. You can talk to us in the chat room while we're on the air, which is right now. We are live. Follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook to get updates between shows, and check out shinysideout.net, shinysideout.net for our show archives, show notes, and links we paste into the chat during the show. You can also get some merchandise. Get one of these apps for your smart device. Revolution Radio, TalkStream Live, or TuneIn.com. You can also purchase a Grace Tabletop Radio. Or, what we'd really like you to do is to go to www.freedomslips.com and jump in the chat right now. If you're in the States, you can call 347-688-2902, 347-688-2902, or via Skype, you can just add Freedom Screen, one word. This is show number 81, and we're going to talk about all kinds of crazy things. How are you, Dave?
I'm doing great. Nice intro, Mecky.
Thank you.
That's one of your cleanest ever.
Right? Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe because... It is.
Do you know, I once again, I want to say hi to Solaris. I listen to the show while I'm reading the show notes and talking to guests, see if we have them in advance. And that was another great show. And, you know, I've spoken to Solaris about, you know, the way, I think everyone does this. They work out a way to protect themselves. So this is a carry-on from the previous show. And, you know, and because there's no book, there's no manual.
No, there's
no.
But one thing to Solaris and our prayers in my case and our best wishes. Now, prayers to my own form of deity, but best wishes to you because you are near Boulder in Colorado, and you are smack bang in the middle of these horrendous floods that you're experiencing right now. I mean, this is probably once in a lifetime. It's the worst storms and floods in history, in recorded history in that part of the world right now. And Solaris is right smack bang in the middle of it.
Did you know that we recorded the hottest global temperature for August ever this year?
Wow.
That's globally.
Wow.
Northern Hemisphere, hottest. Southern Hemisphere, hottest. And as we know, Mecky, we've had bushfires already.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, really bad bushfires. We had 75 bushfires in the last couple of days in New South Wales. So
all
New South
burning,
Wales... Yep.
All burning, and most of those were uncontrolled.
Yeah, that's correct,
They
sir.
weren't under control.
In fact, one of the ones that was controlled, or initially controlled, was backburning. Backburning is what we call, I guess, controlled burning to make sure there's not going to be a worse fire in the future, but one of those backburning efforts got out of control and started a really bad fire. So, yeah, the conditions right now, it's still autumn here, so it's not that hot, but it's dangerous.
Hit 30 degrees.
Yep, again, it'll get hotter, right? So...
Yeah, we'll hit 47 this year for sure, at least. But what I'd like to say is I've been looking at, and this is a correlation only, and I repeat, this is a correlation only. I'm going to paste this into a chat, and I'm going to show Mecky what it is as well. This is into our private chat.
Yes, we have a private chat. That's right.
Yeah, we do. We have a private chat. This is now pasted into the chat room for everyone, and into Mecky so he can see this too. This is it looks like a pinwheel. It's the sun spinning round and round and round, and what it is the emissions from the sun. Now, there's three dots located around that, equidistant. It takes a little while. Equidistant from the center point, which is the sun. The single dot on the right-hand side is Earth. The two dots on the left-hand side, making the points of a triangle, are Stereo A and Stereo B satellites. Now, what we found what I found when because I've been watching this
there we go.
pretty closely, is that this swirl coming off the sun of something that was ejected as plasma with a very high density, Mickey. Listen to this. When we had our 30-degree day, do you think we were in a dense part of the plasma or a not dense part of the plasma? Have a throw a guess at it.
Yes, look, since it sounds like a leading question, I'm going to say in.
Yes! Awesome! Pepsi? Yeah, you in the front row. You're right. And it was an extremely dense plasma outburst from the sun, and we had a correlating high temperatures, north and southern hemispheres. In Queensland, they had 40 degrees. When we had that 30-degree day, Mickey, they had 40 degrees in Queensland. Last week. It's nuts. This is
we don't
it's
get
the
that,
second
guys.
week of spring.
Yeah.
Our fire season doesn't officially start till December.
Yeah, you're right. If it keeps going like this, it's going to be a horrendous summer with crazy temperatures. And everybody from Australia listening, have your bushfire survival plan ready. Seriously, okay? So clean your gutters. Clean the scrubland around your house. Make sure you're safe. If you see the animals going, you should follow them.
They know what they're doing.
That's right.
Yeah. So just like in America, don't have loose furniture and children's toys around the backyard because they'll kill somebody. When the tornadoes come, when the wind goes, they're a projectile. Like here, we have our own worries to deal with, and one of those is the threat of bushfire. Now, as Mickey knows, I live inside bush, and it's not little bush either. It's big, big bush. It needs a Brazilian. There's a lot of very tall trees, and if anyone would take care and time on YouTube to have a look at what it looks like to have an Australian bushfire, our trees, Mickey, Mr. Adjudicator, Mr. Speaker, our trees themselves. I've been watching a lot of political question time. Mr. Speaker, our trees actually don't just catch fire, but the oil in them is also flammable.
Right. Yes.
So when the leaf catches on fire, due to the proximity of another flame, the leaf exudes all of its oil, which then catches fire again. So when an entire tree and all of its foliage is presented with flames, it licks the tree, and then all of this stuff is emitted from the tree, which then bursts into flames, and it's super hot. I mean, the fire trucks were melted. There was a lot of people captive, for moments while these flames went over the top, and it'll race a couple of 100 meters from the fire front through the tree canopy. And we've seen a bit of that in the news with the Winmalee. Winmalee is a little town just nestled in the base of the Blue Mountains. And I know I've got a friend there. There's only one road in, one road out. Good luck with that.
Bear in mind, though, guys, in Australia, the bushfire season is actually required for these plants to propagate. So it's something that is part of nature. It's not something that is horrendous. I mean, these bushfires are actually required for Australian plant life to survive. What we are seeing, though, unfortunately, a lot of people moving into bushfire areas and a lot, I guess, drier summers and drier winters, more to the point, which create a lot of shrub underground, and some it dries out and becomes very, very dangerous. So while the fires themselves are part of nature, the intensity and the frequency with which those fires occur seems to have increased.
You can have, because of the elements that can catch fire and the density of the forest, you can have a ground fire that just moves slowly across the ground, and it just burns up the leaf litter on the floor. And our gum trees shed bark a couple of times a year. So there's a lot of stuff on the ground to burn. And Meki said this, but I just have to correct you, Meki, that we had a lot of winter rain, which has then built up this ground layer of shrubbery.
Right.
All right, but now it's turned dry again. We haven't had, and until this weekend, we hadn't had rain for 30 days, and so it was just ready for a spark, for it to catch fire, and that's basically what happened. So if you have, remember, you only need three things: you need oxygen, fuel, and heat. You take one of those away, there's no flames. But we had all of those things, and we still have, and we perpetuate this. And we have controlled burns all through our winter. The skies are filled with smoke. We're not allowed to burn off anything in our houses because that would be bad. But we just set fire to the bush because we have to, to save our lives in the summertime. So yeah, we feel for all those people in California, because grass fires just rip across the ground real quick. We've seen that here as well. But let's keep this contained. I like to mind the pun. Keep the emotion contained and turn that emotion of fear into action and get an action plan happening. Make sure, if you listen to this, it doesn't matter where you are. If you visit Australia and as you see big tall trees, make sure you know where the exits are. Make sure you know where your information is. Make sure you've got your insurance papers with you. You've got all your credit cards and everything on your person. You've got a radio with batteries and a torch and some food. That's your bug out bag.
Absolutely.
All right.
That's it.
Look, outside of that, Mecky, the floods in Colorado you brought up, very interesting. This year so far, we've seen the 100-year flood in, was it Italy?
Yep.
The 500-year flood, very next week, in Italy, or in Europe, I should say. Same. Colorado, tremendous flooding. What do we have? It was 2 years ago, almost the whole of Queensland was flooded underwater.
Globally, we've seen a lot of in South America, in China, in the foothills of the Himalayas,
the Philippines.
Yeah. Entire villages were swept away. There was an incredible amount of mud that comes through. Entire villages buried. Thousands of people die. Look, again, it's a variation and a combination of factors, but I do believe that we are seeing something change. And I'm not saying who's causing it. All right, I don't know, but the climate seems to be altering itself. We might be partially responsible. There might be. See, the thing though is Mars is also warming up. Okay, and the polar caps on Mars are getting smaller. So
those 50,000 people that have volunteered to go over there are really counting on it.
But yeah, look, the thing is that the event might be larger than just a terrestrial event. Is my point. I think the solar system might be going through a warming period for whatever reason. And I'm sure we're not helping with all the pollution that we're causing, but I'm not sure that it's all just man-made or that we're to blame alone. I think there's more going on than that. Always bear in mind that climate is changing all the time. We're just living in an extremely, I guess, temperate era right now. It's unusual for us to live in this kind of a state, but that may be coming to an end and maybe accelerating because, oddly enough, global warming will lead to global cooling. Take my word for it. The science is there, so we can be looking forward to another mini ice age potentially going forward. What else has been happening in your world, Dave?
Nothing.
Nothing. That's horrible. Something should be happening.
Oh no, you're absolutely right. No, I've actually found some really good websites, and there's one of them, in fact, was, and I'm hunting around on my desktop. I've got 10,000 icons here.
10,000.
Okay, would you believe 10?
I believe 10.
That's my Maxwell Smart, by the way, if anyone couldn't recognize it. I can't find it right now, but there's a tremendous website, and it's so tremendous. How big was that fish that got away? It was huge.
I could write it home. That's right.
No, there's a website that I found, which is... it's basically an open source scientific resource.
Okay.
And it's really good. And the site has data from everywhere, and it's because it's open source, sort of like Wikipedia, but it's not Wikipedia. I like Wikipedia for what you are, Wikipedia, like honestly, but yeah. Not all of the information is accurate, and I found mistakes, and I've tried to get them corrected, and they just go, who are you? Who are you to do this? Who are you to say it? And the guy, whoever wrote it, said no. But what it has, it's amazing. It has so much data on, and it looks like university students and everything from around the world are collaborating their data together for their projects, and it's amazing. So they've shown that the sun's output has been steadily increasing, though it's not a linear line up across time. It certainly is pretty linear in the amount of energy being released by the sun as an increase over time. So I have to say that it was it shines. Once again, another pun. And today's was brought to you by puns and the number 32. It has graphs of everything. So if you've been ever looking at YouTube clips and you see someone provide some kind of graph showing something to do with Earth and Earth changes, guaranteed it came from this site. So they're looking at it. We're looking at it too, and it's really, really awesome.
And go and have a look for yourselves, guys. This is interesting stuff.
If you can find it.
If you can find it. Now, just on that though, now with climate change and the, I guess the ensuing shortages and so forth that come along with it, brings to mind the situation we have for most of the people on the planet, which is dire. I just came back from India, and I only want to say a couple of words about this, Dave. I saw people living on the side of the road. This is in Delhi, the capital.
Oh, yes, I was going to ask you. We forgot last week.
No, that's all good. So essentially, I don't know if you remember the World War II army tents, sort of a triangular-shaped thing with held up with a rope. And just imagine that, except the rope is tarp. In the case of the poor people that I saw by the side of the street, under bridges, the entire families living there. They're not camping. This is actually where they live. That's their house. Water shortages, the cleanliness of water is a problem. And I thought to myself, and power outages, brownouts are very, very frequent. Now, we sit in the office, and nobody seems to notice it anymore, right? And in fact, after a couple of days, I didn't notice it. You sit there, the air conditioning goes out, the light goes out. Your computer is on UPS, so it doesn't really matter. But, the brownout's very common. So I'm thinking, going forward, what I experienced in my very brief time only in India is most likely going to happen all across the world if temperatures are rising, if there's going to be a problem with our energy grid, if there's a problem with the supply of water and food and so forth. I can see it happening very swiftly for the rest of the world. People living by the side of the road, not having water, suffering from brownouts, stealing electricity, whatever it might be. So I think India is not a glimpse into the past at all. Some people go there and go, this is, the way the world was maybe 50 years ago, other places 100 years ago. Maybe, but I think it is much more a glimpse into the future if we don't do something. We're all going to be living like this unless we're very fortunate, unless we're very lucky, and get away, with living in relative luxury as we are. So I think India is a glimpse into the future, guys, and we should do our best to avoid that particular future. Because it was really confronting, seeing that kind of poverty. I've seen beggars before, I've seen people, homeless people in the street, but these are usually individuals. Sometimes you see a child, but these are entire families, right? Entire families, disenfranchised, literally just have this tarp over their heads, and not sure what they're eating or how they get their food, not sure what they do for a living, but it's a real thing. It's not pretty. That's all I wanted to say on this. So if you can make a difference in avoiding that kind of future, please do so, because I don't want to live in that world. Having said that, which is bleak enough, we are also going to talk about hominids today again, probably next week as well. And we have a guest, Dave, right?
We sure do.
And
Dave, live guest.
Dave did a great job getting this gentleman on board. I'm excited to ask the questions. Right, that's brilliant. So chances are that we will carry this over to next week as well, because we've got a whole bunch of stuff to go through. And as we do our research, we find just more and more stuff. And interestingly enough, in the research, I came across again Mr. Jonathan Swift and Gulliver's Travels. You might cast your mind back to the moons of Mars, which he mentions in Gulliver's Travels. Well, there's something else he did in Gulliver's Travels, and I'm sure as we go forward, we will find a lot more stuff coming from Swift, which is very strange, Dave. I don't know if he knew something, or I don't know how he knew it. Right? I'm just amazed at the information coming out of there. But not to ramble on too long. When do you think we probably have another few minutes before our guest joins? Is that correct?
That's true. You know what? I found the website and I pasted it into our private and the chat room for the show on freedomslips.com. Jump in the chat room, have a look. This site is an invaluable resource to anyone, certainly that listens to this show, anyone who is in the chat room, all the researchers out there to do with anything solar. Hang on, my cat wants to jump on my lap. Oh dear. He's old and he has nails. Oh. Yeah, so have a look, honestly, and have a look down the left-hand side. There is so much information at this place. It is honestly, it isn't funny.
Radio. Now, before we have
I'm sorry,
before
Dave drove that to nowhere.
To bring it back online here, before we go into our guest, I would like to quickly bring to conclusion our discussion of the Yeti, as much as we can at least, because there are a few items relating to the Yeti phenomenon which we didn't share with you last week because we ran out of time, and they're quite important. And these are all related to the 21st century. So I'm going to quickly take you through that, and by the time I finish with that, I think we should be able to bring our guest online, who is a Yowie expert. Now, if you don't know what a Yowie is, that's okay. We'll explain to you what a Yowie is in some detail. But let me quickly take you through the information that we would like to share you regarding the Yeti. So this is related to the 21st century and sightings and so forth. In 2004, Henry G., who was the editor of the journal Nature, mentioned the Yeti as an example of a legend deserving further study, writing, this is quoting now, the discovery that Homo floresiensis survived until so very recently. We mentioned Homo floresiensis, and Dave corrected me saying it was in Indonesia that Homo floresiensis was found. Now that the discovery that Homo floresiensis survived until so very recently in geological terms makes it more likely that stories of other mythical human-like creatures such as Yetis are founded on grains of truth. Now, cryptozoology, the study of such fabulous creatures, can come in from the cold. Now, cryptozoology is exactly that. It is the study of creatures that are purported to be either mythological or legendary or not real or whatever it might be. Certainly hidden. So crypto just means hidden. So the hidden animal world. Now, the Yeti is said to have been spotted in the remote Mae Charim area of the Luang Prabang range in Thailand, which is in fact between Thailand and Laos. And in early December 2007, American television presenter Joshua Gates and his team reported finding a series of footprints in the Everest region of Nepal, resembling descriptions of the Yeti. Each footprint measured 33 centimeters, which is 13 inches in length, which is pretty big, had also 5 toes, and they measured a total of 25 centimeters across, so that the width of the foot. Casts were made for further research. Now, this is important, the next one. The footprints were examined by Jeffrey Meldrum of Idaho State University, who believed them to be too morphologically accurate to be fake or man-made.
That's the description that I like the most.
All right? Before changing his mind after making further investigations. Now, I haven't found any details on that, so I don't know what those further investigations are. However, later on, in 2009, Gates made another investigation, during which he discovered hair samples. A forensic analyst concluded that the hair contained an unknown DNA sequence. Unknown DNA sequence, you say? What does that mean? Well, it means we don't know what it is, all right? And since we know human DNA, and we know bear DNA, and goat DNA, and all kinds of other DNA, this is a very strong indicator that there might be something out there which we obviously have not discovered yet. October 20th, 2008 saw a team of 7 Japanese adventurers photographing footprints which could allegedly have been made by a Yeti. The team's leader, Yoshiteru Takahashi, claims to have observed a Yeti on a 2003 expedition and is determined to capture the creature on film, and hence, he's been going back with teams of people to do that. And a group of Chinese scientists and explorers in 2010 proposed to renew searches in the Zhejiang province. And Hunter reported to have seen a bear-like creature trying to kill one of his sheep, But after he fired his gun, the creature ran into the forest on 2 legs. Border Patrol soldiers captured a hairy 2-legged female creature that ate meat and vegetation. Following that, this was in 2011. Now, the creature allegedly was more similar to a gorilla than a bear, but its arms were shorter than the legs, in contrast to a gorilla. It was about 2 meters, which is 6 feet 7 inches tall, and this was revealed later as a hoax, though. Okay, so there are reports that are coming through, and some of them are hoax. Now, possible explanations for these things, and this is important as well, were given by a number of different people. One of them is misidentification of Himalayan wildlife, and that could have been a langur monkey, it could be a Tibetan blue bear, it could be Himalayan brown bear, or a Himalayan red bear. Some have also suggested that a Yeti could actually be a human hermit, someone that lives by themselves in the mountains and doesn't really get much human contact. However, a well-publicized expedition to Bhutan reported that the hair sample that had been obtained, which by DNA analysis by Professor Brian Sachs, could not be matched to any other known animal. Okay, analysis completed after the meteorites, however, clearly showed samples were from a brown bear. Now, this is not the one I just mentioned. This is a different DNA sample. In 1986, South Tyrolean mountaineer Reinhold Messner, he's a German. South Tyrolean, it's really German, claimed to have a face-to-face encounter with the Yeti. He wrote a book, My Quest for the Yeti, and claims to have killed one. According to Messner, the Yeti is actually the endangered Himalayan brown bear, which can walk both upright or on all fours. Now, since he killed one, you wonder, if he killed an endangered animal, why is he not in prison somewhere? But anyway, that be that as it may. Some speculate also that these creatures may be present-day specimens of the extinct giant ape Gigantopithecus. It's a huge ape, 7 feet, 8 feet tall. Oddly enough, a vegetarian. However, the Yeti is generally described as bipedal, meaning walking on 2 feet. And most scientists believe that the Gigantopithecus was a quadrupedal, meaning he walked on all 4s. And so massive that unless it evolved specifically as a bipedal ape, walking upright would have been even more difficult for the now extinct primate than it is for its existing quadrupedal relative, the orangutan. Others also believe that in fact the Yeti is just another species of orangutan. So these are the Yeti components or Yeti information we wanted to bring to you. There's something else that we could talk about, which is the Pangbosche hand, which has been revealed to be a hoax as well, and is in fact a human hand. So we won't, spend too much time on that. Some DNA testing was done in 2011. So if you've heard of the Pangbosche hand, it has been tested, and it is definitely a human hand and not Yeti. We are just about to bring our guest in, I think.
Yeah.
Though we've got a whole bunch more guys, so stay with us and next week as well.
Yeah, awesome. Hang on, I'm gonna pull him in. I've got to call a landline, so bear with us, and we're gonna see if we can bring him in. Hang on a second.
The telephone will ring. Maybe.
There we go. We can hear it. We hear it ringing. The anticipation, huh?
Hello?
Tony, this is David from Shiny Side Out. How are you?
Oh, good, David. Good, mate. Yeah. So everything proceeding along all right there?
Yes, it is. We're right at the cusp of talking about the Australian connection. We've just talked about the Pangbosche hand for the Yeti, and we're about to move into Yowie Town. Now, just for everyone, for our listeners out there, I'd like to say that we have on the line Tony Healy. He's an investigator of the unexplained. He's Australian. He's co-author of Australian Poltergeist. It's an upcoming book. Should soon be on the shelves. Also, a book, The Yowie, and another book, Out of the Shadows. Co-author on all of those. Now, Tony, welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mackie.
Hi, Tony.
Nice to talk to you, Dave and Mackie.
How are you?
Oh, good, mate. Good.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself for our listeners, if you wouldn't mind?
Sure. Let me see. I'm getting on a bit now, 68 years old. I've been interested in, cryptozoology mainly, chasing sort of very elusive, unclassified animals for 40-odd years. And along the way, I developed an interest in poltergeists and ghostly phenomena in general, with a sort of a vague interest also in UFOs. So you might say, in a way, it's a hobby that got pretty well out of control about 40 years ago, and it's led me to some very interesting parts of the world and to a lot of interesting people such as yourselves.
It's shed some light on my future.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong there. Can I ask you, Tony, what actually put you on the path that you took down? You said it was a hobby, fair enough, but is there an event or maybe a series of events which led you down this path?
There were there was an inexorable sort of a trajectory, I suppose, with a few events along the way. I think I was about 12 years old, and I read a book about the Loch Ness Monster, Out of the Shadows. No, not Out of the Shadows. A book by Constance White called More Than a Legend, and I got very intrigued. Then years later, I was driving through the cane fields up in North Queensland, and saw what looked for all the world like an American mountain lion beside the road. It was a very fleeting sighting, and for years I thought I must have imagined it, but then I realized or learned that there have been hundreds and hundreds of sightings of large sandy-coloured cats and large black cats in Australia. That was one step along the way. And then in Canada in 1969-70, I was working in the logging industry up in British Columbia, and I started to hear about the Sasquatch, Bigfoot up there. Some of the guys I was working with seemed to take it very seriously, and then I slowly realized that there was a strong belief in those things by the American Indians, and when I got back to Australia, I read a few books on it, and also researched the Himalayan Yeti mystery, and I thought, well, I'd like to go chasing both of those creatures, which I did in 1978 to 1980. For 2 years, I did nothing but travel around the world looking for those sorts of creatures in Canada and the States, and Nepal and Malaysia, and checked out about 35 supposedly monster-haunted lakes as well along the way, including Loch Ness, of course. So that was it. And after that, well, there was no turning back, as they say. And so I teamed up with Paul Cropper in 1980. He was chasing the so-called Kangaroo Valley panther, big black cat that was killing a lot of animals down in Kangaroo Valley. So we ran into each other down there and got along quite well, and we've shared our files ever since, and co-authored, as you said in the intro, 3 books together. He lives in Sydney, and he's currently up in Japan, and I live here in Canberra. So we either together or by individually, we zoom around the country and parts of the world trying to solve, usually in vain, always in vain, trying to solve these various mysteries.
You said something very interesting there. I mean, you traveled all around the world, and from the sound of it, into fairly remote areas of the world. So something that Dave and I have postulated is, people always say, "Oh, how come we don't see it? How come we don't have more, experiences like that?" And Dave and I said, "Well, most of you guys live in the city, or in city areas. Very few of us ever venture into true, I guess, natural or wild environments where most of these creatures would be. Would you agree that most of the human race, as it were, like the civilized types, live very far away from nature and are not very likely to ever have these encounters?
Yeah, well, that'd be right, Mackie, for sure. And of course, the human population is becoming more and more urbanized all the time. It's, and growing inexorably. What are we heading for? 9 billion people. It doesn't
Close
bear
enough.
thinking about.
Yeah.
So, I've always, I like to spend as much time as I can in the more remote areas, but Canberra here is a city of 400,000 people. There are weird animal reports quite close to this city. There's a vast wilderness, essentially just a few minutes away, the beginning of it. Yes, it's hard to say. I guess people who live in the bush or who work there, like rangers and so on, are more likely to run across these things.
Tony, can I ask a question? There was a very, very old story that was, I think it was in a newspaper, about people that were in or around Canberra.
Yeah. Oh, yes. There's been there were quite a few from the colonial era here. Yes, the Webb brothers, who, the family still owns a large property out on the edge of the mountains near Canberra. The property's called Fairlight. The Webb brothers back in the 1880s said that they saw a gorilla-like animal and fired a shot at it. But they weren't the only ones. There's been many, many others in the the Brindabella Mountains, which are to the west here, and to the Tinderry Mountains, which are to the south, and to the Great Dividing Range, which is to the east. So we're surrounded on three sides by monster-infested wilderness here.
Just for those people in the world that are listening to this and really don't understand how remote these places are, I swear when you walk through it, it feels like you're the first person there.
It certainly can, David, yeah, as you know. When we were writing, putting together our book, The Yowie, we scoured a lot of maps, of course, and did a lot of calculations, and it's quite staggering, the extent of some of the virtually trackless forests quite close to some of our major cities. In fact, most remarkably, as you know, you live at Gosford, I believe, the Blue Mountains just west of Sydney there's literally tens of thousands of square kilometres of the most rugged country imaginable, thickly forested and crossed by just a few fire trails. I think, I just forget the figures, but it's in our book. I think we worked out there was some 15,000 square kilometres of really, really rugged wilderness hugging the western edge of Sydney. And in that wilderness, just a few years back, they found, you remember the Willamite pines?
The Willamite pine, that's right.
Willamite pine, that's enormous great trees that everyone thought had become extinct at the time of the dinosaurs. And there were a couple of groves of them deep in the canyons there that nobody knew existed.
And that's the thing, Tony. We tend to dismiss the Aboriginal, and I don't mean just Australian Aboriginal, but I mean all native peoples in the world, accounts of these creatures or even a natural phenomena, because a Western person has not said so, right? Which is really terribly arrogant of us, because the people that live there usually know more about it than we would. Which brings me to another component, which is Aboriginal sightings. The name itself, Yowie, as well as Yahoo, and the hairy man. Do you have any more information around those topics? I mean, obviously the Aborigines have been seeing these creatures or beings for quite some time.
Yes. I think we have in our book we've gathered about 20 or so Aboriginal terms for the Yowie or hairy man. A very common term in southeast New South Wales is doolagal, or terms that sound very close to doolagal. The term Yowie itself is actually, there's a bit of a question mark over that. Some researchers think that it's not a genuine Aboriginal term, but I think it is, but it wasn't widely used. There are certainly a couple of Aboriginal terms that are authentic, that sound pretty close to Yowie. So I think it's probably genuine. It may have been used in the Blue Mountains, where tragically most of the Aboriginal tribes were pretty well shattered and dispersed and nearly annihilated during.
Just like Windsor.
I beg pardon?
Like in Windsor, the Aboriginal population was almost completely wiped out.
Oh yes, Windsor, on the Hawkesbury there.
That's right.
Yes, they suffered terribly, of course, because that's where the European impact was earliest, and But the Aborigines these days, as far as we were able to tell, the belief in the existence of the Yowie or hairy man is just universal amongst Australian Aborigines. Absolutely universal. I've never struck one who didn't know about them and who didn't seem to believe in them. Some Aborigines clam up. They don't want to talk about the hairy man. They have various taboos, and they have there's a spiritual aspect to the hairy man that some of them don't want to talk about. Others will talk reasonably, quite openly and cheerfully about it. And some will talk to a certain extent about it, but then say, I can't tell you any more. It's a secret business, as it were.
It's with the greatest respect to the Indigenous owners of our country that we do talk about this. And, And we've not found any difference between the continents references to this same creature around the world, just like the American Indians' references to the Sasquatch.
Yes.
And the crying woman, which is another term in one of those pockets. So just for everyone else, by the way, Tony, for everyone listening, the Australian Aboriginal language is vastly different and evolved in pockets around the country. There are some places, like where I live. I actually live in a town called Narara, and it means black snake.
All right.
Because it's pretty much infested with red-bellied black snakes. Yay to us. But that's not the term for the snake somewhere else.
Yeah.
So they evolved their own language and walkabout was one of the only tools they had to assist the spread of language. And trade, of course, had some influence. But this is something very, very powerful. There were some tribes that have said that they killed them.
Yeah, you hear, that's right, there are traditions of that, up at Mullumbimby there's a tradition that there was once sort of a warfare between the hairy man and the local Aborigines, and the Aborigines eventually triumphed, and the hairy men withdrew into the more rugged areas and hills and so on. And there are other stories like that. The stories from up Cape York of a giant hairy man being killed, and in more recent, almost historical times here, there was an old Aboriginal guy, Harry Williams, who was in 1903. He told some friends that, white friends, in fact, that Webb family that I mentioned. He told them that he had seen a hairy man speared to death by a group of warriors in around 1847 when he was a boy, and he said they dragged it down the mountain by the ankles. He said it looked like a black man, but covered all over with grey hair. That was where the present site of Burramjuk Dam, and one of our most hair-raising modern Yowie reports was from just that site. So it's always interested us that many of the modern reports come from locations that are identical or very close to where Yowie incidents occurred in the colonial era.
That's very interesting because when we did the research for this, I guess the sequence of shows that we've done, 80, 81, probably 82 as well, we came to the exact same conclusion because all over the world there are really ancient, very old accounts of be it the Sasquatch, a Yeren, an Alma, Bigfoot, Yeti, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
They would be localized, and there would be accounts going back for that particular region or specific spot for hundreds of years. So that lends credence to the fact, I guess, that something is there. And this goes to our listeners, guys. Just because some professor at some university in the West hasn't found them yet or hasn't studied them yet doesn't mean they don't exist. We should really spend a lot of time honoring and listening to the natives of any given region. Because they're there. They live there. They've lived there for thousands of years. They probably know what's around. Okay? So we can't dismiss it, right?
Yes, well said, Mickey. Yeah, I think that's quite right.
I want to bring this to listeners' attention. There's a website, and we've put it into the chat room for everyone, but it's yowiefile.com. YOWIE file.com. Go there. This is a wealth of information. You guys, Tony, you've put this together, and it's fantastic. There's clippings, news story clippings here from 1872 from the Sydney Morning Herald, which I've been reading, and I'm looking through this, and it's truly amazing. They were very quick in, let's call it the olden days, in the 19th century, to attach the story to something that was familiar to people. So they would say it's a gorilla or another gorilla or something, ape-like, and that drew the people in. It's not dissimilar to the story that's all around the world. All of the native peoples talking about all of the news trying to bring this to light. But with all of these stories, there's this kernel of truth in the middle. So have we seen a continuation? I noticed that you've got a contact number on your website if you happen to see one that you can call and you can make a report in. Have you seen? Has there been a peak? Is it dying away? Are we encroaching on their habitat and coming in contact with them more often?
Well, it seems that there are more and more reports every year. I think largely because of the internet, there was an explosion of reports really as soon as some of our colleagues started to establish websites. Like one guy, Dean Harrison, I think he established the first Yowie website in the 1990s, and it's just an awful lot of reports coming in. As you mentioned, we've just finished a book on something totally different, Poltergeists. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty well absorbed all my spare time over the last 4 years or so. I've spoken to a couple of Yowie witnesses and gone to a couple of sites, but we haven't been, and Paul's been to more. Paul has normally fields those calls that come in, and if he can, he travels out to the sites. But mainly we've been concentrating on this other subject now, the poltergeist.
There's a school of thought, Tony, and I don't want to muddy the waters here, but I do believe that all phenomena are related. I believe that all mysteries somehow form part of a larger web. We did a number of shows on poltergeist phenomena as well, and one thing we came across was the skinwalker wrench phenomenon in the States.
Yeah.
Yep, and there was the statement made that there were hominid sightings, so be it Sasquatch, Bigfoot, or whatever, which would disappear. There were things that couldn't be explained unless you pulled in extra-dimensional mathematics and possibilities of movement, as well as a poltergeist phenomena. So, do you think? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you think it is possible that there could be a relationship potentially between these phenomena?
I do actually. Strange as it may seem, and Paul Cropper and I, although we see eye to eye on almost every aspect of these things, we tend to disagree slightly on this. I've noticed over the years that there seems to be something very strange about a lot of Bigfoot and Yowie reports, and some of the stories I've heard and collected seem to involve ghostly phenomena and UFO phenomena.
Right.
In connection with the Yowie and Bigfoot sightings, strange as it may seem. Paul is still reserving judgment on that, but I think really it's highly unlikely that the Yowie and the Bigfoot and the Yeti could really be normal flesh and blood animals. I cannot see that this is just a zoological mystery. There are too many odd aspects to a lot of the sightings. It's a bit of a long story, of course, but
No.
but certainly, when we were putting together this book on Australian poltergeist mysteries, I couldn't help but feature one story from 1946 from out Wilcannia, which is in northwest New South Wales, way the heck out in the dry country. That it was a poltergeist event, but it was also a Yowie event. Mm-hmm. This family had just moved into an abandoned farm to re-establish it, to get it back in running order, and they were their house was invaded repeatedly by this, as the fellow said. He said, some great big hairy gorilla-like thing, roaring and screaming and smashing things, and he just assumed, knowing nothing about the Yowie, he said, well, it must have been some kind of escaped gorilla. But he also noted that there was showers of stones on the roof and objects moving around in the house. Mm. So it was a dual poltergeist Yowie event, quite clearly. So that takes some explaining. If you try to argue that Yowies are just purely flesh and blood, some sort of unknown animal, that particular case is very difficult to rationalise.
I agree with you. Sorry, Dave, I know what you're going to say, but I got to mention this quickly before the break, and after the break we'll talk about Lloyd Pye, UFO, and Bigfoot. But because we're on this right now, sorry, what the Skinwalker Ranch scientific team found, that they found there's a phenomenon there they're trying to study, but it was as though the phenomenon knew it was being studied and did its best not to be studyable. Right now, I know this sounds.
That's quantum theory on you.
Right, exactly. So this sounds incredibly, I guess, obtuse. But But the point is that it may very well be that empirical science has come to its end when it comes to studying these phenomena, and we need to employ some other different methodology to come to terms with a phenomenon which knows it's being studied and may alter its behavior accordingly.
Yes. Well, that sounds like you're on the right track there. How we would do that, I don't know. But the normal investigative techniques just do not seem to work. It's like all of this phenomena, be it the Yowie, the Bigfoot, the lake monsters for that matter, UFOs, ghosts, poltergeists, they can run rings around the investigators, absolutely seeming to anticipate the investigators' every move. So, yes, I don't know. It's certainly mind-boggling.
I was... Just before we've got like 2 minutes before the break, if we're lucky. Just to let you know, I was in my bathroom in my house all alone. I'm surrounded by bush, and there's 10 kilometers of bushland out my window before the next house.
Yeah.
And you get that feeling like someone's watching you. I've never had it. I can happily be unafraid in my own house, and no one can see my house. Yeah, it's in the bush. So I knew something was looking at me from outside. Then I heard a stick break exactly outside the window, and to look in that window, you would have to be 7 foot tall. Yeah, and something was on the other side of that window. And with the window slid open, but just the screen protecting me. But because of the light pollution, I couldn't see out of that window. And I did want to, but I was a captive audience. I was, doing what men need to do, and to go to the toilet, standing up, looking out the window, and all I want to do is cease that. I wanted to run away from it. And I went out there and I looked for tracks, and it was nothing. It's pretty rocky, and there's a lot of twigs, and there's no way a human would be able to do it, and certainly I wouldn't want to be walking around in the Australian bush at night time. Mm-hmm. I've got too many spiders and bitey things that'll kill you. So I figured that was pretty quick. Look, Tony, are you able to stay with us till after the break?
Yeah, sure thing. Dad.
All right,
yeah.
fantastic.
Oh, fantastic.
You're welcome to stay on as long as you like. And
Yes, please.
we should hear some music any second. But look, what I'd like to do is just remind everyone that the website and what we'll be doing also in the show notes for this show, we'll put in the links to the books as well, and the website, and we'll have everything in there. And it's a pretty good resource, I have to say. So look, if you're watching this on YouTube, look below. Everything's down below.
And there's the
There's
music.
the music.
Don't go away,
Perfect
guys.
timing. We'll see you on the other side of the break, guys.
Yeah, okay.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
There is no denying the world is awakening. We see it in the global uprisings and demonstrations of the people around the planet and the new way of thinking and living that is arising naturally within each one of us and our communities. I have been a major player in this global shift and movement for over 20 years and have helped tens of thousands of people around the world change their lives and find their voice in order to help create the paradigm change we so desperately need. Join me here at Revolution Radio on the Just Bernard Show every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time for 2 hours of powerful interviews and discussion with some of the most influential visionaries of consciousness, alternative media, and suppressed knowledge. We promise to reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience.
Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. If you plan to call in and speak with one of our hosts, please turn down your radio and separate yourself from any background noise and wait for the area code to be called on before you speak. And don't forget, Revolution Radio freedomslips.com is listener supported. So stop by the homepage, freedomslips.com, visit the site support area to help support the host you're listening to's airtime. Thank you. Revolution Radio freedomslips.com, where the truth never sleeps. Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
You're back with Dave and Meckie's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com. That's right, as Hawk said, the number one listener-supported talk radio station on the net. Mm-hmm. This is listener-funded radio. If you like what you hear, please go to freedomslips.com and push the donate button on the site support page. It's on the left in the chat, by the way. Just hint, hint, hint. Your donation is greatly appreciated and helps run the station. We are halfway through show number
81.
Awesome, and we're talking about Yeti, Bigfoot, Squatches, and the Yowie in Australia. And we have, not only is Meckie on board, yay, but we've got Tony Healy as well, an Australian researcher and author in the subject. Thank you, Tony, for staying with us. Now, I was going to ask you a question, if you're still here.
Yeah, mate. Yep.
Yay! Phew. I didn't want that to go to nowhere. We interviewed Lloyd Pye early on, wasn't it, Meckie? Early on in our show, last year.
Last year, probably July, August timeframe, yep.
Very fortunate to talk with him live. And he said that when people start doing the rounds, you're trying to get the information out there, and they get a lot of the conferences, and I mistakenly called it a show, and he clearly said it wasn't a show. It's information. You're passing information out. He said that he initially started to getting a little bit of heat from the people in the UFO camp when he was talking about Bigfoot, and when he was talking about UFOs, the heat from the Bigfoot people. He said because they were polarized, and he said in his findings, just like you said this before, and that's what I wanted to bring it up. And thanks, Mickey, for reminding me as well, that this is something that I think it's further reaching than we understand. Maybe they're just pilots of UFOs that come down and do some stuff and have some fun. Maybe this is an adventure planet. Just think about how wild. Remember this, Tony, I warned you this is a tinfoil hat zone. Yeah. By the way. So yeah, maybe. We don't know. In America, I'm watching this Finding Bigfoot thing, and they don't seem to ever come across a Bigfoot. There's a lot of evidence, but there's not a lot of they don't walk up and shake their hand, and they don't talk Yeti to each other. So, but it seems as though it looks in all the descriptions of all the sightings, it's either a single let's squatchy kind of creature, to being like a family which is a nomadic. That they don't seem to live in the exact area. Maybe they're nomads. Maybe they're like the Australian Aboriginals who didn't set up home somewhere. They were nomadic too. What do you think?
Well, certainly I think 90% of sightings involve just a single creature. Mm-hmm. That's the same in North America as here. I think we did the statistical breakdown in our book, The Yowie. We had approximately 300 reports, and the vast majority of them were just single creatures. I just can't remember offhand the statistics, but in America it's the same. It's almost always just one creature. Occasionally people see 2 or 3 or 4, even up to 5 or so, but that's pretty rare. As to where they live or what they do, I have no idea. But they certainly don't seem to build much in the way of structures. There's been a few Bigfoot beds and nests found, and also a few Yowie nests, sort of beds, in fact, do you remember, overseas listeners wouldn't know about this guy, but do you remember the Bush Tucker man who was on television here?
Yep.
Yeah, Major Les Hiddens. He and a party of scientists stumbled across what seems to have been a Yowie bed up in the jungle up near the Atherton Tableland some years back. And,
okay.
So that was very well attested find. It was a bed constructed of lawyer vines that had been chewed through, or the fronds from lawyer vine, they'd been chewed through, they hadn't been cut. Mm-hmm. And there's been various beds, but not much in the way of other structures. Occasionally, Yowies will be reported in the vicinity of caves, but not often. Sometimes these beds are found under rock overhangs, but that's about it. But given that I suspect that there's something, shall we say, paranormal about Yowies, I don't know whether they live anywhere. Maybe they're from, as Mackie sort of mentioned in passing, another dimension. Maybe they come and go. Some American Indians told me that about the Sasquatch, and the Aborigines here seem to say that they can't be caught. Whatever they are, they can't be caught. So
that's interesting.
Look, and that's you're right. And most of them, I mean, both Dave and I have been researching these kinds of phenomena for decades now. This show is just a culmination, a lucky coincidence, if you will. Even though I don't believe in coincidences, but to I guess express our views and get the chance to talk to researchers like yourself, who've got a lot more experience. But the point is that these phenomena, in a counterpoint, I guess, are, I think, almost unknowable with our present mindset. It's very difficult to put them into a framework that we can comprehend. And because any natural phenomenon can be studied and dissected, and then there's the empirical method and Occam's razor and all these wonderful things, which just don't work here, right?
Yes, that's right. It makes it a very impenetrable mystery. And as David was saying before, a lot of the researchers, Yowie researchers and Bigfoot researchers, they balk at the idea that there could be, as it were, another dimension, a paranormal side to the mystery. They insist on believing that these things are flesh and blood, and it's just a matter of time before one is shot or run over by a truck or captured on film. And some of the, as David also said, some of the UFO researchers don't want to know about any possible connection between big hairy ape-like creatures and UFOs. So it's not only the skeptical scientists who are totally skeptical about the whole thing that's a problem. It's various levels of skepticism. I remember I was last in the USA in 2007, and a veteran Bigfoot researcher who, unfortunately, I won't be able to give you his name because he asked me to swear that I wouldn't
reveal.
Yeah. He wasn't
him.
so much worried, I think, about general public. He was worried about his more skeptical Bigfoot hunter friends. This guy took me to was in Oregon there, and he took me to a place overlooking a hillside overlooking a spot where a pretty well-known Bigfoot event occurred, and he said that he had been at that spot a year or two earlier, and an enormous, great UFO came over and hovered over just overhead, and shot a beam of light down. The whole thing. And on another occasion, he was in the valley below with a colleague, and in the winter, and they split up, and he trekked off down a snowy ravine, and came back and had the proverbial missing time syndrome, about 45 minutes unaccounted for, and they'd found Bigfoot tracks earlier in that same spot. He came back anyway. He had the missing time, and also when he got home, he found that his whole body was sunburned under his clothes.
Wow.
Yeah, and I said, wow, well, this sort of seems to imply there's a link between UFO activity and Bigfoot. And he said, yeah, look, I know, but please don't tell, so-and-so and so-and-so. He was a member of one of those well-known Bigfoot investigation groups, and he said, oh, look, I just can't be bothered arguing with them. I know what they'll say, so just keep it between you and I. So
they'll eat him alive. That's extraordinary.
And the problem is that there's a polarization even within, I guess, we can call ourselves a fringe community to the established path. And the unfortunate thing is that there's the polarization there. I mean, everybody's got their little thing, right? Maybe we should be more inclusive. At least Dave and I think, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't seem to get into too much in the way of arguments with people. Long ago, I threw my hands up, more or less, in the face of this impenetrable set of mysteries, and just laughed and said, "Okay, look, I'm not going to live long enough to ever figure all this out. Let's just have fun investigating, and try not to take it, for God's sake, too seriously."
Yeah.
And just carry on, try to have a life as well outside of it. No, I don't get into arguments. Paul Cropper and myself, we're different sort of personalities, but we get on very well, and neither of us are joiners, as it were. We don't join any sort of organisations.
Sounds like Dave and I.
It does.
Yeah, it's the best way to go, mate. Yeah.
I reckon you're right there.
Do you know, I was going to tell you, while I've got you on, I thought it might be a great question to ask you. You're familiar with the Black Mountain?
Up in North Queensland.
You certainly are.
Yeah. I visited it not so long ago, but I didn't climb it. But very. Well, obviously you're familiar with it. Isn't it a spooky place?
It would be completely treacherous to climb it. I couldn't imagine climbing it with any success.
Yes, and people have supposedly gone missing there, as you know. And one thing I did hear when I was up there, about the only thing I did hear, was that one of these mystery big cats, the alien big cats, had been seen on Black Mountain.
Oh, wow.
So, I leapt at that, of course, because as Meckie has alluded, a lot of these mysteries seem linked, and there's certainly a link between the mystery black cats and the big hairy ape men. That's quite evident. I don't know what on earth the link would be, but they crop up time and time again in the same areas in different continents. So so what did you particularly raise the matter of Black Mountain?
Well, just for everyone listening and for the archive purpose, that Black Mountain is a huge pile of granite boulders.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granite boulders which were never joined together. It's not as though it's named called a rubble pile. It looks like a large ant's nest, where these pieces have been brought from somewhere and placed there. It's not natural in the landscape. There's nothing else like it, and certainly I don't know anything about it being anything like it on the planet, except for there. And yet granite isn't found normally around the area. And yet the Aboriginals have these tales. This is for everyone out there. Tales that it's a place you don't go. You can go missing. It's open to the underworld. There are people or things, creatures in there which will consume you. The farmers say that their cattle have gone missing when they get too close or around it, and yet no sign of that cattle has ever been found. There's the tales of people of going missing. I know that these are like roundish boulders, black granite. It doesn't seem likely that they'd be used for anything else, unless, of course, you had a machine that made clear, close to spherical black granite round bits, and you wanted to heat them up to push them like putty into a wall.
Yeah. Look, I don't know whether they're round. I wouldn't say that they're round. Mm-hmm. Maybe that detail is wrong in some of the literature, but they're certainly black and shiny and just dead eerie. They're all jumbled and piled up so that the whole mountain is honeycombed with various people have gone or caving or exploring in there, and you wouldn't get me in there for $100.
Not at all.
$1,000, no. But it's certainly weird, and they say there's a whole lot of funny groaning and whistling noises come from the mountain. But as I said, I went up to Cooktown a couple of years ago, and we just stopped and walked a few meters up towards the mountain. But you'd want to be very well prepared and equipped to climb it, because you could certainly at least break your leg. I don't know about going missing, but and of course it's hellishly hot up there too, and the black rock just
absorbs that heat, and radiates.
Yeah.
My question towards you, towards Black Hill, though, was: is it like a magnet for any sightings? Is there any UFO or Yowie sightings that are associated in the area?
Well, not that I'm aware of, David. No, it could be that there is, but I just don't know. As I said, the only thing I heard specifically was that someone had reported seeing a large big cat on the rocks, but from memory, I don't know whether. I'm pretty sure I didn't even get a name. There wasn't even a name attached to that. It was just this story. So it's not nothing world shattering. But
is that similar to the chupacabra or the black panther around here?
No, I wouldn't say. Well, the chupacabras. I mean, seems to be a creature that hasn't been particularly well defined in terms of physical description, as far as I know. I haven't heard it described as a black panther myself.
No, it's not. You're right.
No, and I haven't been able to investigate any chupacabras stories myself. They're from the Latin America there, aren't they? Puerto Rico and Mexico and places. I noticed there's some stories from down in Argentina area as well, but from what I've read, it seems a bit like it's just one of those terms that's applied to anything weird that happens to be killing cattle in the area. But look, I just don't know. My friend John Downs from the Centre for Fortean Zoology in Devon, he and one of his buddies went to Puerto Rico a few years back and interviewed a few people and came back with a alleged chupacabras track. Well, it didn't look like a cat track. It looked pretty mean. It obviously had big claws, but I don't know. I can't claim to be any kind of an expert what in any way about the chupacabras.
So I was trying to draw maybe a connection there with the black panthers in the eastern seaboard of Australia.
But
the sightings around,
just on that though, I'm curious, and we haven't actually broached this topic yet, Tony. So apologies there. Your own personal experience, like your own personal, did you come close to, I guess, a hominid or hominoid, a Yowie, a Yeti? Did you, I don't know, or how close did you come, if at all?
Oh well, I may have been close on a couple of occasions, but I wouldn't swear to it. In Washington State, in USA, one time I was camped with a bunch of people at the foot of Mount St. Helens, the volcano that exploded a couple of years later. And there, of course, have been reports of what they call the Mount St. Helen apes from as far back as the 1840s there. And that's the site of the famous Ape Canyon, where a Bigfoot was supposedly shot and fell into a canyon in the 1920s. Anyway, we were camped there, and I didn't hear this, but there was one of the guys who was with us woke up. He said he heard something like great thumping, something stamping its foot, near the camp. Well, another guy also, that's right, two of them heard it. Got up, shone the torches around. There was nothing, but that's right. The first guy, he also smelled absolutely devastatingly foul odor. which is, as you know, associated with the Bigfoot and the Yowie. Every now and then, I think that one incident in 8 or 10, the witnesses are absolutely nauseated by this smell that's indescribably foul. As I said, the one guy smelt that, the other one didn't, but he heard the thumping. Why I think that was the Bigfoot was because of the smell, one thing, and the thumping. But a day or so later, a couple of our friends drove into the camp and said they were wildly excited, and they said, "You'll never guess what we saw just up the road there, this track." And we said, "What?" They said, "This huge black panther just went across the road in front of our car." And by that stage of my investigations, I had noticed that I've been in several areas of North America where both the Sasquatch and the mysterious black panthers had been seen virtually hand in glove. So I thought, oh yeah, here we go. The same thing's happening again. The same pattern.
This is very interesting.
Wait. I've just our conversation is interactive, and our chat room is alive. And I've got a fellow from Australia here, and he says, "I've seen the black cats Mount Best South Gippsland, and I've also had a private message in Skype from another listener who's listening from Australian Paul, and he says black cat I see here in Victoria."
All right. Yes.
So both two different people citing Victorian or Gippsland.
That is interesting.
Sightings.
Yeah. Gippsland certainly has a long tradition of big cat sightings. There was a ranger there, Mr. Estopi, back in the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s. For many years, he was trying to track down the what they called the Briagalong tiger, which was killing stock like nobody's business there. He sent away to the USA for a bear trap, which his family still has down there. There's been many reports of big cats in Victoria from the 1870s at least. In our first book, Out of the Shadows, we have a long chapter on Australian big cat reports, and some of the earliest and best reports we have are from Victoria and Gippsland in particular.
It's very strange when I hear about these things. I usually don't have I guess maybe I have a high tolerance for acceptance. I guess I can accept things when someone tells me, unless they prove to me they're lying. I wonder, and this is a twofold question I have for you. I wonder why people are so averse to accepting that there may be. I mean, big cats, I don't think would be such a gigantic leap, to be honest with you, right? And certainly, I mean, a hominid, fair enough. I understand why people have some misgivings. I get that. But so, number one, why do you think people are so terribly opposed to these phenomena? And two, and more importantly, in all of your travels and your investigations, which have been extensive, as you've shared with us, have you ever encountered any official hindrance? Has anybody ever blocked you from going anywhere or suggested that maybe you shouldn't be looking at something?
No, just the second part of the question. No,
Mm-hmm.
I've never experienced that myself, but, you hear of such stories, but no, I've never been prevented from going to any particular place. But as for the first part of the question, like you, I've never been able to quite understand why people seem to be so frightened or so averse to keeping an open mind about these mysteries. But a lot of people, a lot more people, are open to the idea of some kind of exotic big cats having got loose in Australia. There's not such a level of skepticism about the big cats because it's quite plausible, really, isn't it, that
Yep.
someone along the line would have let some big cats go. There's
Private zoo owner or something.
the proverbial circus truck that rolled over, and things escaped. And in fact, my friends Rebecca Lang and Mike Williams, they put together a fantastic book all about Australian big cats. In fact, that's the title of it, Australian Big Cats. It's available on Amazon and so on. And they actually did discover, I think, one report, a genuine incident of, two, I think, incidents where trucks from circuses did, in fact, crash and animals got out.
Right.
But I think in both cases all the big cats were supposedly recaptured. So that does happen. But the most commonly believed explanation in Australia is that American servicemen that were here during World War II en route to New Guinea and the Pacific Islands, the explanation is that some of those units had American mountain lions and as mascots, and they released the cats into the bush here rather than destroy them. When they had to go up and fight in the islands. It's very tempting to believe that, but the fact is that big cat reports predate World War II in Australia, and it doesn't really account for one strange thing about the big cat reports. As I mentioned, I saw what looked like an American mountain lion, a sandy-coloured cat, but and a lot of reports do feature animals like that, but a lot more feature jet black big cats. Well, American mountain lions are never black. They just do not come in that colour.
Yeah.
So there's never ever been a case of a black puma having been shot or captured or photographed. So that just doesn't cover it. Big black cats would have to be black pigmented leopards. That's okay, except there are no or very, very, very few reports of spotted cats in Australia. So if the black ones are black leopards, you would think that we would see a lot of spotted ones as well. And the final clincher that seems to point to the fact that these are not normal animals is that in many areas the sandy-coloured big cats are seen with the black ones. They're seen at the same time, together, and that occurs in the United Kingdom as well, as you may know, with the Surrey puma and the Bodmin beast and Inverness lioness, so-called. People see the sandy-coloured ones and the black ones together on the same properties, or sitting together out there in the forest. So whatever these things are, they aren't pumas and they aren't black leopards.
Well, that's the thing. We've actually got in the chat again. This is a live show, guys. JMJ12 has just shared with us that he or she, I'm not sure who JMJ12 is, has in fact a video of a big black cat, and the dad was filmed it, and they all grabbed guns, but the cat was way too smart for the people pursuing it. On personal eyewitness accounts and so forth, Dave and I have encountered in our researches for this particular show or show series, and in the past as well for the last 1.5 years, that in the past, and I'm talking about the 19th and 18th century, people would leave affidavits, like sworn statements as to certain events, be it sightings of creatures or finds of an anomalous nature within archaeology, and that would be enough. So people gave their word that this had indeed happened, and they were a bit more open, I guess, to the mysteries of the world rather than being closed as they are today. So my question is, Do you think we have been deliberately educated away from being accepting of these mysteries? It seems that in the olden days, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, people are more accepting, a bit more, I guess, open to accepting other people's word for things as well.
Yeah, well, perhaps so. Perhaps so. You know, I mean, science or scientism is really the ruling paradigm these days, isn't it?
I like that term, scientism.
Me too. That's just rung a bell.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair to the skeptics, I mean, people have been chasing Yetis, Bigfoot, and Yowie now for in a big way for decades, and nobody has come up with even a single finger bone, let alone a carcass. And as for films, well, the Patterson film I still think is probably almost certainly real, but that seems to be the exception to the rule. These creatures don't seem to allow themselves to be photographed as a rule. So you know, I can sympathise with the skeptics to a degree, but it is irritating that they ignore what is an absolute mountain of good testimonial evidence. Like in our book, the Yowie, for instance, so we have, as I said, 300 reports, and in 115 of those cases, there was more than a single witness. There were 2 or 3 people together, and 50% of the sightings occurred in broad daylight. So, you know, I think a lot of the skeptics are a little bit afraid to really delve into the data, or they just consider the whole thing just too silly for words, and they don't deign to even look at the data.
Do you know, Tony, I'm just going to jump in, Mickey. Stanton Friedman suggests that if there's 1 million UFO sightings and only one of them is real, then it's real.
Yeah, I guess.
It doesn't. All of the other sightings that may not be real, like maybe it's 60% of the sightings could be explained away as something else, or because the observer isn't trained enough to make the right observation, or it's swamp gas or whatever Mickey and I laugh about. It's just the usual description. It was Venus or something.
Yeah.
Despite it being only 10 feet away from you. I've seen a few sightings in Australia. So a lot of the videos in our research, and the people seem credible. They don't seem to. This is not something you'd attach yourself to because of ridicule. Once again, ridicule comes up, and yet, you're right. Being in broad daylight, not being less than 15 feet away from something, I think you get a pretty good handle about what it is you're seeing, and being able to recall that. And I think what's lost, and this is what Mickey was saying before, is that, you know, an affidavit was usually enough, and we trusted people. And now I think we're seeing this reinvention of trust again because of YouTube. Yeah, there's some skepticism, of course, and things can be edited. But when someone's just recounting what they saw for seemingly no financial benefit, it has to lend some credibility to this. And you know, we're seeing one. I'm seeing what looks like a rise in stories, but even though some of these were from some of the 80s programs, TV shows, and 90s programs that have now resurfaced again because of YouTube. I think this is an amazing. It's a credible time. I like the joining of maybe there being a pet. There's a UFO. There's a Sasquatch, Yeti, Yowie. You know, what was Bunyip? Bunyip was another term.
Bunyip lives in the water holes. I guess it's a shaggy creature, not really like Loch Ness, isn't that right, Tony? But it's certainly inhabiting water holes.
Yes. Yeah, out of all the Australian mystery animals, the bunyip is the most difficult one to really get a handle on. But in fact, Paul Cropper and I are assembling a whole lot of 19th century bunyip reports at the moment. Next year we hope to put out a book entirely about the bunyip, just a source book really, just case after case after case with a little bit of linking text. But we had in Out of the Shadows, we have a long chapter about the bunyip, incorporating all the material we knew in 1994 when the book came out. But yeah, as you say, Mackie, most of the reports seem to involve a creature like usually described as something like a cross between a huge dog and a seal, but a lot hairier than most seals, and with pronounced ears, and solitary and nocturnal, although a lot were seen during the day, but apparently nocturnal. They may have been a real flesh and blood animal. They may have been a type of seal, unclassified type of seal that went up the river systems in the pre-colonial times, or and were perhaps became extinct when the rivers were dammed and the weirs were put across the rivers. But every now and then, very rarely these days in the modern era, there might be a report. But there were a minority of reports also of creatures that did in fact answer to the general description of the Northern Hemisphere lake monsters. The big-bodied creatures with a long neck and a head about the size of a dog.
Yeah.
Well, these were reported not so frequently, but every now and then, and occasionally still reports come in from coastal estuaries of similar creatures. I'm off to Tasmania in about a week and a half to spend a couple of months down there, and there were lots of reports of the shaggy seal dog-like bunyip in Tasmania in the up to about the 1950s. So I'm hoping to collect a whole lot of stories and visit several of their lakes.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
You see, maybe, look, and we've got another 15 minutes left in the show, and it's flown by. But because Dave and I are, we're armchair researchers, or have been for the last year. Do you have any? I mean, because Dave and I would like to go out into the wild, as it were, and do some of our own research. We've got a few sites in mind. Any tips that you could give us, or maybe potential researchers out there, what to look out for, how to approach the subjects, what to prepare for, anything at all would be helpful.
Well, given my unblemished record of never having photographed any of these things, I hesitate to give any advice. But and I should say that although I have done a lot of field work, there are a lot of other people in Australia who've spent more time in the bush than me, and like Dean Harrison, for instance, from up the Gold Coast way. He and his colleagues go out with game cameras and infrared cameras and walkie-talkies and God knows what. And although they have had encounters with yowies, they've never managed to get a photograph. Personally, I just go to interview the witnesses, and if a spot can be more or less pinpointed, I'll go there and camp out, maybe walk around, sometimes leave what might be, you might think a yowie might be interested in eating, some rotten fish, they're supposedly like that. And I've just belatedly bought a game camera that I'll be using in Tasmania.
Oh, awesome.
But that'll be the first time I've ever used one of those. But basically, I just go out, I take plaster of Paris in case I see a track. I've only ever once made plaster casts of big cat tracks, in Kangaroo Valley, and I've only once or twice seen or been shown Yowie tracks. As I say, I can't say I'm an expert on any of this, but I don't know. I suppose you've just got to approach the mystery as if the creatures are real flesh and blood. I mean, if there was something like half man, half ape out there, well, you'd just go out there and walk around quietly, or stake out an area, and always keep the camera handy and hope for the best.
Do you know what? I think that's astounding. It's really hard. Even in today's world, we live in what's called the era of the phone, with the convergence. Everyone's carrying around, a high definition. It's crazy. High definition camera. I've actually got an application on the desktop that is an instant camera. The moment I push it, it takes a photo.
Wow.
And yet, even though I'm prepared, because I'm on the UFO side of everything, and through our research, all we've found is everything's connected.
Yes.
Everything is connected. We found an uncanny reference to monatomic gold in the early days of all of our going back in time. Everything was connected to something.
And people seem to have had knowledge across this. And when I love Gulliver's Travels, Tony and Dave. Dave knows this. And Gulliver's Travels makes references to both the moons of Mars, Phobos and Deimos, some 150 years before they were discovered, and also makes reference to Yahoos. Right?
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. So I don't know. It seems that some people somewhere along the line knew a lot more than everybody else, right?
Yeah, or maybe Jonathan Swift, who wrote Gulliver's Travels, was some kind of a mystic or psychic, and either knowingly or unknowingly sort of tapped into some sort of a I don't know, a cosmic mind or something. But it was interesting, remarkable, really, that he set that island where the Yahoos, he called them the Yahoos, these hairy ape-like things, lived, the land of the Winhams. He set that island just off the coast of South Australia. He wrote that book in 1726, and that portion of the South Australian coast was mapped by the Dutch, but that was the extent of the maps. They didn't know anything beyond that, so I guess he thought, Gulliver goes to the end of the earth, and that was the end of the earth. But it's quite to us, it just seemed quite remarkable that he imagined this race of ape-like creatures and called them Yahoos, and they were within 20 kilometres of the coast of Australia, where we have these hairy ape-like things called Yahoos or Yowies or whatever. But it's a funny thing. There do seem to be strange connections and constant odd coincidences, it seems, in this business.
You're 100% correct. And Dave just reminded us we've got another 8 minutes, so I want to fill it with as much as I can with you while I have you, Tony.
Sure thing.
Just, by the way, Tony, you're a wealth of information. This is I'm so pleased. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Dave.
Go ahead, Meg.
Look, with the Australian mysteries, and this is where we bring the Australian perspective to this particular radio station. There's I think another show that is Australia based, if I'm not mistaken. So it is really important, I guess, for the rest of the world to understand how big Australia is. That we do have the same kind or very similar phenomena that everybody else is experiencing across the world, and we have people engaged in very serious and dedicated research, such as yourself, of course, and your partner. In crime, as it were, and it's really our time to showcase this to the world. There are other research as well. We haven't spoken to Rex Gilroy yet, but we probably would like to do that in the future, and other people coming to speak in Australia, and people are realizing this is a very old country, and the Aborigines, the custodians, of historical custodians, have a lot of wisdom and knowledge to share. So just on that, you mentioned that a number of times throughout the interview. Some are reluctant to mention or to engage in conversation, but have you found that there's a lot of wisdom or a lot of knowledge that the Aborigines are willing to impart upon your research?
I don't know whether you'd say a lot. I mean, they're certainly interesting, and the ones that are willing to talk certainly impart a lot of interesting stuff. As for the wisdom, I don't know. Some of them imply that there is, the Yowies have a kind of a spiritual link with the Aborigines. Down southeast New South Wales here, there's I believe, sort of how the American Indians have a sort of a spirit quest. They go off into the wilderness by themselves, and they won't come back until they have a vision, a meaningful vision. Down southeast New South Wales, I believe that sometimes the young men would go out into the bush, and the goal would be to just stay out there until the Yowie allowed them to see it, or a Yowie showed it themselves to the young man, and then they could go back. One thing we haven't touched on really is just very briefly, the Aborigines in many areas, I don't know whether it's universal, but they believe in the big hairy man, the Yowie or Dooligal or whatever name, the big hairy Bigfoot type one. They also believe in small hairy people, which they have, again, many different names for. And this belief extends right from Western Australia right over here and way up to Cape York. The little hairy creatures, the Junjidi is a common term. They are believed to be have healing powers and to be magical creatures that look after or look over sick children and so on, and guard certain areas. The big hairy men too are seen as sort of custodians or defenders of some areas as well, the natural environment. As I said, some Aborigines won't talk about the Yowie. Some will say something. Others will say a lot. But I can't say that Paul Cropper or I can claim to be experts at all on Aboriginal Yowie lore. I mean, we've collected bits and pieces here and there over the entire continent, and we've collected the writings of early anthropologists who interviewed Aborigines, so we've tried to put it together. Odd sort of things like over in Western Australia and in southeast New South Wales, there's a belief that the big hairy men are seen much more frequently in stormy weather. It's interesting that some early white British settlers in the Canberra region here came to the same conclusion, that these things were seen in stormy weather. There's odd sort of bits and pieces of Yowie lore. But as I said, I couldn't claim to be an expert on what the Aborigines believe about these things.
You've certainly told us a few new things. I can tell you that. So, and that's really greatly appreciated, especially about the smaller creatures, which again you find across the globe as well.
Yeah.
And it's just a, I guess I don't want to take up too much time, but it's the commonality of these things. Because I mean, the thing is this: you can look at something and if it's just here and there, and people make stuff up, fair enough. But if you've got unconnected cultures having the same stories, right? In fact, unconnected for thousands of years, then something has to be there has to be something to it, right?
Oh, I would say so. Yeah, I mean, I'm totally convinced. I can't see how everyone just could have, by chance, imagined the same sort of stuff in all different corners of the world, and across racial divides and continental divides. It's just there is definitely something to it. These phenomena are real, but God knows what the real explanation is.
That's fantastic, Tony.
Is that the music?
Thank you. It's the music. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for everyone listening out there, and we'll catch you next week for another Shiny Side Out.
Okay.
See you all
Thanks,
later.
David. It was a pleasure. Thanks, Mickey.
You're welcome. No, thank you.